Leading-edge research interview with Jon Robinson Letters from Andromeda -1997. The following material is a follow-up interview conducted with interim interview with Letters from Andromeda on upcoming new information December 18, 1997. Original transcript by Val Valerian Legend, Junior equals Jon Robinson VV equals Val Valerian Jr. I have some information to give to you. VV, go ahead. Jr. Well, basically, Morani told Alex prior to Thanksgiving that Boston, Chicago, New York, Atlanta and Indianapolis have the highest probability for a biological terrorist attack, which will take place in the time frame between the spring of 1998 and early summer of 1998. VV, how comforting. Jr. Well, when you look at all the stuff that is going on about the vaccination of the troops with the anthrax vaccine. Alex was talking to Joyce Riley, and she says that the troops don't want to submit to the vaccines. VV, you can't blame them, after what happened with the experimental vaccines in the 1991 Gulf War fiasco. Jr. That's their primary thing. Certain parts of the military are saying that in light of the Gulf War syndrome, they don't trust this, and they haven't tested this vaccine. From what I heard from one of my brother-in-laws, who is a lieutenant colonel in the reserves, it's an 8-shot affair for each soldier. VV, yes. That's what it indicated in the New York Times review of this event. It's on the website under Alert News. This biological attack probability, is this what the Andromedans say is in the time stream? Jr. Yes, as far as probabilities go, and we're all hoping that this is one of those probabilities that doesn't come to pass. He was saying that Clinton was tipping his hat over all of this. VV, what does that mean? Jr. Whoever he was talking to was talking about some news bite where Clinton was asked a question by a reporter. What about the American people? In regard to these inoculations for anthrax for all the United States military. Clinton was of the opinion that the American people didn't need to be told about it, that it was nothing for them to worry about. But anyway, that was the tidbit from Morani. Alex got a call today from someone who wanted to know when he was going to have the new stuff up on the website. I have forwarded that query to him. VV, I have on the website that the new newsletter would be coming out about the 1st of January 98. Jr. That is basically when it will happen. Have you heard about Ed Dame's prediction that everyone is going to be taken out by a sunspot? VV, no one who is aware pays any attention to Ed Dames. He encodes his perceptions with his own agenda and paradigm. Junior, he is talking about a precursor that could happen any time now. To me, it sounds more like a test of the HAARP device. VV, after listening to the Estes Park tape of November 22nd, I recall that Morani asked Alex who's in charge of your political environment, and it was indicated that the government wasn't in charge, but the people were supposed to be in charge. Yet, in the same lecture, it is stated that no position of power is filled by an original human being occupying a body, but in fact is filled by alien, probably draconian souls, occupying physical bodies, and that aliens are running everything. This seems like a contradiction, in a way. You see what I mean? How are we going to take charge when aliens are in charge? All this over and above the fact that we have a population that is generationally and neurologically impaired, on purpose, who will not be able to take anything to task. The people don't have the probable capability to do this. Surely, if the Andromedans don't know this, they should know this. So, that's a paradox which has never been satisfactorily answered. This is not a new question that has been directed to the Andromedans. The fact that alien souls are in charge here seems to invalidate the advice that people take charge. Jr. Some of the current events which Alex will talk about in the newsletter is that kind of stuff. I think what Alex was trying to say was that Morani has been talking about this for some time now. It is already known through his lectures that the transfer of souls is going on with people in power, and that both sides of the coin are doing this. Morani was trying to point out the fact that most of the top brass in the government, and those behind the scenes, have already been taken and replaced by draconian souls. Alex and I always talk about all the rhetoric that is slammed down our throats by religious and political people, the stuff that goes on around us anyway. The question has always been, how can we make an informed decision when we as a people really don't know that the truth is? VV, well, this is what I'm saying. On the one hand, the effort is to get people to be more self-responsible and take charge of their lives from the bottom up. Yet, the whole show is not even controlled by humans, per se. What people perceive as the government is not the government at all, but a bloc that is controlled by the Draconians and the Jehovah Group. Jr., I'll give you another tidbit. The aliens from Nibiru are back in town. Of course, we knew that, and the craft is sitting out in the rings of Saturn. VV, this is the new moon recently discovered in the rings of Saturn by astronomers. Like a new moon is suddenly going to appear out of nowhere, and the people are supposed to believe that people intently studying Saturn for 50 years wouldn't have noticed it before. Jr., now, we know for a fact that Enlil and Enki are back and demanding their rights to the people of the Earth as their property. The Andromedan Council has told them, no, you are not going to have access. VV, the ultimate paradox I mentioned before, about a neurologically undermined population, still remains unanswered. How can you have a consensus of intent that cannot effectively even be conceptualized in a generalized way in the population? If you combine this with the fact of draconian control, it would seem like it would demand intervention on the part of the Andromedan Council, because the population cannot effectively ask. Do you see what I'm saying? That is what I want an answer on from the Andromedans. It is a crucial question which overshadows everything here. Jr., we are also trying to ascertain the true bottom line for the Andromedans to be here in the first place. We want to know, point blank, what their agenda is. VV, you mean, over and above the quashing of the tyranny they came back here to change? Jr., yes. From what Alex says, there's more to it. We have learned that Marani monitors all our conversations, and so in essence Alex really doesn't have to bring a lot of questions directly to him. We have had incidents in which we have had conversations between ourselves, only to get answers a few days later from Marani. We have learned that in 1998 the Andromedans are going to do something which will be embodied in a world-scale event. Although we don't know precisely what they're going to do, because they won't tell us precisely, or when exactly it will go down, they said that the Council has decreed that it will go down next year, and that a worldwide event is going to take place simultaneously everywhere so that people can make a decision within their minds about the existence of extraterrestrials. VV, in other words, an open presence scenario. Jr., something like that. We don't know. There are so many ships that are blatantly there, and people aren't even looking at them. Alex says that we are going to be seeing more and more craft, and that they are coming from everywhere. VV, coming from both the progressive and regressive sides. Jr., yes. I get the impression that the ones we are primarily seeing are the good guys, because they are tightening down the blockade and will physically expel anybody that tries to get in here. VV, relative to the scenario in the Estes Park lecture about the UN moving to Geneva and the UN troops overwhelming the United States, are the Andromedans going to allow this to happen? Jr., they can only get involved in our stuff to a certain extent. We have to do a certain amount ourselves. VV, by we, you mean the neurologically damaged population? Jr., that's the big debate. How neurologically damaged is the population? VV, well, this includes psychosocial programming over generations, plus the fluorides and the junk that is in the food, water and air. Jr., well, that is part of the latest stuff we talked about. VV, relative to what? Jr., well, they were talking a little bit about the history of what went down on this planet. They said that when contact started taking place during the Eisenhower administration, Marani said that the government motivated big corporations to start adding chemicals to the food, because they wanted to slowly make the human population undesirable to the Draconians, who view humans as a food source. They thought that they would poison the food source, the population, so we would not be as appealing to the Draconians, and they might leave the Earth alone. So, they started this plan, with good intentions, to poison, but not kill, the population. But, it got out of hand when corporate greed came into being and all these other agendas with the Rockefellers and others started coming in. VV, to poison the population deliberately in order to make them sick and reap billions in medical costs. Yes, I know about that. It is what is proven in Matrix 3 Volume 2. Jr., again, Marani said that it started out with good intentions, even though it was a stupid thing to do. The general population has no idea that they are slowly poisoning us on purpose, in the hope that when the Draconians get here en masse, we won't be appealing. On the other hand, the greed and the money that was involved with all of this stuff transformed into other agendas, which included extermination of populations. There is a reason for the turnaround in thinking on the government level, because most of the major players in government are Draconian souls anyway. VV, I remember several years ago in Congress when there was an argument and one congressman referred to his opponents as reptilian bastards, and they really got angry. Little did anyone know the reality behind that statement. Jr. One of the new things coming forward now is that for the first time ever, the Andromedans don't really know if they are going to win this contest with the Draconians. VV, the Council. Jr. The Andromedan Council does not know for certain what the outcome on this planet will be. VV, why? Because of the stopping of the time travel on the parallel dimensions and the subsequent increase in event velocity here, introducing variables more rapidly. Jr. Well, yes. The resulting increase on this main timeline was not anticipated by the Andromedans. It caught them off guard. Let me read something to you from the upcoming newsletter. VV, alright, go ahead. Junior, this is as of September 24, 1997. The Andromedans, a particular Palladian group and a group from Procyon directly intervened on two parallel realities, one of which was directly created by Montauk technology. The reason behind this action was to seal all time travel on those realities. As a result of this intervention, our present timeline has been sped up, so everything is moving even faster now, in addition to our original recognition of time being sped up. The Andromedans don't understand why sealing the time travel has sped things up on this level. Moraine said that the leaps in knowledge or consciousness are going to change as quickly as every 24 hours. In other words, the amount of activity that is occurring now, or that which occurs in the 24-hour period, as far as a sequence of events goes, now has been sped up. What this has done is that it has changed the probabilities dramatically. The Andromedans didn't know this was going to happen, because there are so many things about what is happening here that are brand new, not only to their experience but to us as well. VV, the end result could turn out to be a positive sequence of events, though. Jr. Yes. It could turn out to be a positive. But, because of all this increase, they put whatever they were going to do on hold. They had to go back and debate the matter, because if by intervening on the two parallel realities it created this kind of effect, they were trying to figure out the result if they intervened on the main timeline. VV, but, now, they have already decided to make an appearance, in essence, in 1998. Jr. Right. That was the result of the 90-day debate, after which Moraine came back and announced that there will be an event next year in 1998. The next tidbit from the newsletter. If you remember in some of the talks, Moraine had talked about the walk-in process, how the human body can have its occupant bump out in 4 minutes and have another occupant come in. Well, the actual transfer takes only 4 seconds, but there is a preparation period which lasts minutes. This process has been happening in Area 51, involving Russian, Chinese, Australian and English military members. This trend of events all began in Germany when the Nazis opened a time portal and the Greys came in for the first time. After the Second World War, the technology came to the United States via Operation Paperclip. They took the technology immediately to the deserts of Nevada and Utah, and there they started playing with it again, opening up a window, allowing a ship to come in. This happened because our people were purposely being baited into a meeting to negotiate an exchange of technology. Every time a meeting took place, the military people involved in those negotiations would come back in the same physical form, but the souls were different. In other words, the original soul was taken out and a draconian soul was put in. Fifth density draconians are the major factor here. This has been happening since 1934. What all of this means is that almost all of the world's military and most of the political leaders are walk-ins. They are not Tyrans anymore. VV, and these people know that they are draconians. Jr. Yes. They know who they are. They are originally fifth density draconians. Some call them dimensional beings. Whatever you call them, it took a ship for them to come through a time portal to be here. They just didn't walk through. While there have been some beings that can walk through, they can't survive here for very long. The next tidbit was, on top of that, is that the Draconians are trying to invade through the time portals, and our government is still continuing to play with time travel. VV, even though they can't be successful at it anymore. Jr. Right. We shared this information with Al Billick, and he came back a few weeks later and he started naming off all the stuff that isn't working anymore. Basically, the bottom line is that all Montauk travel has been shut down. All his handlers are very pissed off at the Andromedans about this right now. Well, I will continue. Now, Every time the government scientists, composed of draconian souls in human bodies, tries to open a portal, it is immediately sealed. Portals that have been open for some time are being shut down and sealed, as well, and guarded by the Andromedans, who have come under attack from the other side. Moreni has stated that the Draconians are trying to fight their way through the barricades in order to invade this planet. Moreni would not tell Alex what is so important about Earth than the Draconians would want to invade it like this. Moreni said, "I can't tell you, but the Council is extremely surprised at the resolve of the Draconians to get in here." In a very concerned way, Moreni then said, "We are losing." Alex said, "During the 33 years I have known Moreni, he has never used the word losing. Now, that is a Terran word. He didn't say that we were losing ground. He just said, we are losing." Moreni stated that the concern of the Council now is that this whole thing has become the equivalent of your Vietnam War. Alex asked what he meant by this, and Moreni said, "It has become political. There is too much discussion of what to do. Most of us know what we have to do, but it involves direct intervention. The concern of the Council is that if they do directly intervene in our reality now, which means they would have to literally come in here physically and destroy the technology, what would be the long-term effects for the Council itself for violation of its own regulations and rules?" Alex asked, "What about the other timelines?" To which Moreni replied, "They are not the proper timelines. They were falsely created additions or amendments to the main timeline, and it is this main timeline that affects all others, including the Andromedan Council. We know that everything is connected, but to what extent it is connected we are not told." Alex asked, "What would be the bottom line for the Draconians wanting the Earth's population?" Moreni replied, "They want control of your planet for consumption." Moreni said that as the cusps of probabilities are changing with the increase in velocity, and that the pole shift will absolutely occur within the next 6 years. What will happen is that the North Pole will roll toward the west, during the daytime, and as the planet rolls the water will first move opposite to the motion of the shift. Alex asked Moreni, "What can we do?" And Moreni replied, "There are just not enough of you asking for help. It is to be a choice." Alex said, "People don't know. They just don't understand." Moreni replied, "Who runs your political environment?" Alex said, "The people," and Moreni said, "Their decision to do nothing is also their decision." VV, right, but we have the situation mentioned before about the Draconians being on control. JR, right, and I have argued on those grounds back and forth with Alex, and he understands where we are coming from. He can only answer from what he has been told. The newsletter goes on, again, it comes down to self-responsibility. The information is out there and the people are choosing to ignore it. Moreni told Alex that in the 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds, your governments were told of the true intent of the Draconians by a race from the Pleiadians. What our governments decided to do was to introduce additives to the food that would poison the people slowly in order to make consumption by the Draconians less attractive. He added that this process has become perverted further into a mechanism of control by your governments and corporations. Alex asked, "Is there a new definition of our future?" Moreni replied, "I don't know what it is, now." This whole conversation, when Alex had it, was very upsetting, because he could clearly tell that Moreni himself was upset. He could not truly answer Alex's questions. Sometimes when Alex gets a communication, it is like a one-sided tape recording. Alex can only write it down and can't even ask questions. Moreni is really busy, and although they are taking out Draconians, there are many lives being lost up there. It's really starting to eat things up. Craft are becoming more obvious in the sky, and they are coming down closer to the Earth. Motherships are sitting anywhere from just inside our atmosphere, all the way out to just beyond the moon. Some of these craft are phenomenal. One showed up over Denver just after Thanksgiving, even though it is actually sitting between the Earth and the moon, but it is so big and so obvious, you would swear it is sitting right over Denver, because you can see all the little craft running around it. When it sits there, it is the biggest thing in the sky. It shows up about twice a month. VV, people don't normally look up and try to discern what they cannot conceive as being part of their reality structure. JR, I guess, but I am always looking up. VV, back to Al Billick. What were some of the things he said were not working anymore for the government? JR, he said that the government is experiencing problems with the Earth defense systems, the ST stuff. The time fields are down, satellites are very weak, certain cellular connections are weak, and it seems that 850-854 MHz and off frequencies are being affected, global satellite systems are malfunctioning, and ELF transmissions are being interrupted. VV, what about the recent anthrax vaccine thing? Considering that all the top brass in the military are draconian souls, do you think that they and the DOD would be interested in causing another virulent plague as a population extermination measure? JR, well, I think the DOD has a hand in it. VV, so, in effect, the draconians are in effect conducting biological warfare against the human population. That's what it really ends up to be. JR, right. The thing is, we were blocking them and not letting their reinforcements come in, or their advance teams out. We were blocking a lot of races, and they are accumulating out there and insisting on their right to the Earth and its population. Enki and Enlil have told the Council that this planet is their property and they want access to everything on it. VV, and the Jehovah Group. JR, Jehovah is the same being as Enki. Yahweh is the same being as Enlil. Another thing that Alex will be bringing out as he works on the second volume of Defending Sacred Ground is that Robert Marduk has been given a bad rap sheet. Everything that the Andromedans have been turning up on him actually indicates that Ra did more for the people of Earth than has actually been told. VV, draconian propaganda, no doubt. JR, that could very well be. Again, this information is based on the Andromedan technical capability to holographically review our timeline. They have their own intelligence organization. First it was announced that Jehovah was here, basically watching over the Israelites. It is his craft that you noted on the website that was sitting out in Saturn's rings. Well, since then a good portion of the rest of the Nibiru are now back. That is when Morani started talking about Enki and Enlil. What he's saying is a lot of people are wanting to come in here, and that the Andromedan Council has drawn a line in the sand and is saying, in effect, no, you're not going to be allowed in here. So, what we were looking at is a situation where if a lot of these groups want to start getting hostile, before we know it we will have an Armageddon over our heads. This is what I say is probably the result of the original Orion conflict. VV, now, the potential biological incursions on these American cities you mentioned before would be motivated by draconian intent? JR, ultimately, the draconians have their hands in everything, but I don't know if they have their hands into the intent of the Nibiru. VV, which is... JR, that's what we were trying to find out. They were coming in here and laying claim to us. Obviously, from what I am learning in the historical aspect of it, they came later. VV, so, if the draconians have their claim for purposes of consumption, what would the Nibiru claim be based on? Genetics? JR, yes, basically within that scenario. You know, the draconians, from what I remember, were here a long time ago, well before the Nibiru or others came in, but since they are great geneticists, they might have had a hand in other things that occurred after they came here, including the primary basis for the Terran race. They were saying that's where the ape line came in, the beginning of the genetic soup where others came in and did their thing. All of them have their own agendas. When the Andromedans talk about the time when groups from the Palladian system were warning Earth about the draconian intent, you could take the reptilian intent and include the agenda of a lot of races within the context of that intent. Alex says that Robert Morning Sky is heading in the right direction in terms of what he is coming out with, but he doesn't have it 100% down as far as the historical timeline is concerned. These are things that Alex is working on right now to bring out, because a lot of things discussed in the first volume of Defending Sacred Ground are starting to come true. So, that is why it is even more imperative to get the second volume of the book out, in which he is going to deal with the history of what has transpired. There are two main factors here on why this would be a good thing for Alex to talk about. One factor is that the Andromedans, other than on their little 50-year exploratory mission to Earth 60,000 years ago, have otherwise not been here for any reason. They were not playing according to any agenda when they came here, despite the fact that they fell under attack when they did, and the entity who is now Alex was disembodied and became trapped within the Earth rebirth system. Their lack of agenda relative to Earth is a matter of historical record, unlike some of the other groups. So, they don't have anything to protect or hide, and they are going to tell it just like they see it. VV, and now they have decided to appear next year. JR, yes. There is going to be a global event. We have been discussing this, questioning why the Council would need to debate this matter when it is quite obvious that they would need to intervene. So, they ought to come in here in such a way where the media spin doctors cannot spin this away easily. Enough people will see it so where they will have to be faced with the idea of life elsewhere, which we hope will make possible a dramatic shift in thought patterns. Although, the draconians in human form, being in charge, might just declare to the population that we have a new enemy in the skies. I mean, look at what the draconian-controlled media is doing with the new Gene Roddenberry series, Final Conflict, where the otherwise benign-appearing companions are seen as having an ulterior agenda. If those from Nibiru get their way and come in, they are going to play the reality twist involving the Nazarene biblical scenario they started to begin with. If the Greys come in en masse, they are going to try and execute their agenda involving the technology of the holographic Christ. In other words, the Maitreya scenario. Right. You already have one group here which is trying to do its thing in Mexico. We had a whole mess of these manipulative beings that humans referred to as gods that came here and played their games with the population, sometimes showing compassion and sometimes not. This is why, when asked, that the Andromedans could not find any archangels in the Earth's timeline, all they found were fleets of ships which were called by these names. Take all the media programming with respect to all the disaster films that have been coming out, and continue to come out, and all the films like Starship Troopers playing out Darwinian win-lose struggle conquer scenarios, all of which really represent the regressive thought paradigms that have gotten this civilization into so much trouble. All these films insert in the creative imagination of the public, from which a lot of reality is projected, doomsday scenarios which must, then, come to pass by virtue of the reality-bending capability of the collective mind of the population. Well, sure. There is a battle for control of the media going on between both positive and regressive elements. There are some things that truly reflect an advanced thought process phenomenon, as an example, and there are misinformative paradigms. The thing is, there are so many agendas being thrust forward on the population. We were looking at the idea of prophecies. You have the Indian prophecies, biblical prophecies, etc. A lot of them dovetail with each other, and certain ones don't. He says that every one of these groups has a self-interest to bring their particular prophecy to bear, because if they do, they will keep the population hoodwinked within that paradigm. You have a lot of different players down here from a lot of different groups, which is why you see a lot of different behavior. But, a good portion of the population is partial, and a good portion of the population has the potential to band together as a cohesive unit and consciously change this whole paradigm down here and the reality as we know it. Basically, what they will do is just release the atomic structure of matter and we will all go back to consciousness at that point. Really, that is what the implosion is all about. It is our conscious thought that pulls together the creative aspect of the isness in the form of matter and creates our reality by the intent. Again, the fact that we can do this with our minds amazes the Andromedans, because again they need holographic technology in order to accomplish the same thing. There is some other stuff we are going to have in a newsletter that deals with intent. Alright, go ahead. This is close to the most recent material, this month. We are entitling it Physicality of Emotion. This is what Mirani had to say. The Earth grid, the magnetic field as you call it, is multidimensional. The origin of the source of energy of this magnetic field is drawn from an upper dimension. The energy is drawn from above you to your physical space of creation. This draws physicality to your creation. You manifest atoms that join, and you have created a physical reality. Because of the nature of the force, you already draw upon. Your world of physicality adheres/joins/dances and communicates in the form of geometric language. Your native races fully understand this science. It's been almost lost. I would like to share with your races what it is that draws upon the force above you, but please understand that what it appears like when it manifests in your self-created physicality is magnetic electricity and plasma. The force that dictates the form and shape of physicality, a geometric language, is emotion. Emotion. Your races believe that you're only activating 10-13% of your brain capacity. You are truly using 90%. It is just that your race's focus, life after life, has been to create the outer physical. Your races have forgotten to balance the outside with what is contained within. Most of your races have lost the ability to register all of their emotions. There has been little investment of this reality by your races. This must change, if you are going to be healed as a race. Just remember your original intent. Basically, they are coming out with a little more of the answer to the puzzle for us to start thinking about. What they are saying is that we have the capability of making the change. If we as a country or a race want to stop all of this, we can stop it. So, when you talk about the media and the other stuff, on one hand the war in the media is such that certain shows are trying to bring out certain truths in hopes of unlocking within us certain thoughts in order to open us up to ideas like this. Other shows are trying to turn us off or put us in fear. I mean, why is it that 90% of the time when the media talks about a alien race, that they talk about the gray? There is so much more to alien existence than the grays, but nobody is really bringing out the fact that there are a lot more human-looking alien races, like the Andromedans, the Pleiadians and those from Procyon. The military, we know, was originally afraid of the fact that there are extraterrestrials that look just like you and I, but, really, if you told the public that there are extraterrestrials that look like you and I, and you don't do it in a negative fashion, then that is going to take a little of the fear away, and it just might promote the fact that there is plenty of other life out there and we aren't it alone, as we have been programmed to believe. You look at the agendas. You talk about political agendas and religious agendas, but in reality they are one and the same. They are not separated. Politics is a religion, and politics is going to protect religion. Especially if the majority of the politicians are not who they really were, then you can see why they want to hold that agenda. VV, of course, yes. JR, keep the religious thing going to bring forth all these other agenda. The whole thing is designed to keep the population confused. That's part of the manipulation. What the Andromedans are saying is that we have the answers within us, if we would only realize who we really are, and that we control the situation. In essence, if you take it down a step and think of why everything is focusing on America now, the crux is that the invasion is going to happen worldwide, but the world is going to be watching America and how America reacts. We are supposedly the bastion of freedom. VV, which invasion are you referring to? JR, well, you could talk about any type of invasion. The thing that the Andromedans are talking about, the thing they say the focus is going to be on is the United States. If you take down the United States, the rest of the world will follow. It's not so much that we have the might, in terms of weapons. It is that the American people, despite what the draconian government does, still behave with an air of freedom. People, despite the fact that the wool is being pulled over their eyes, will tell you that they, in their minds, are free. As long as things don't come and slap them too hard in the face, which is why they haven't pulled some of these other things off so far as yet, because people will not openly tolerate it. The way I look at it is that we can fight this bloody revolution and still be messed up afterwards, because we still are going to get through all the fundamentalist crap, which is one thing that the Andromedans have said we have to let go of. VV, people would still be stuck in old paradigms of win-lose struggle. Yes. What could cause the religious crap to let go is open presence in the atmosphere, unless of course they go ahead and call it the devil in their same old way, in which case it would just intensify elements of the religious right, and for the believers it would intensify power factions, which are still based on outdated social paradigms. But, the way it would actually play out is not set in stone, because of the variables in reality presentation. JR, it really depends on who gets down here first. It's one thing to have one type of presence, but it is another to come down here and speak. If you get Enlil and Enki, Jehovah and Yahweh, down here, that's it. They set up the current religious paradigm which pretty much dominates on this planet between the Christian and Muslim faiths, two religions which dog each other all the time. Right there, you were talking about a large part of the population to begin with. If you get the Maitreya part, that brings in the Buddhist aspect of it as well. Maitreya is supposed to be what is called the next Jesus Christ. VV, according to the works of Lobsang Rampa, the character called Maitreya is not due to appear on this planet for 2 million years. Nothing Lobsang has ever written about has ever proven to be inaccurate, as far as I know. So, there are several reasons why the Maitreya that is supposedly here now is a fraudulent manifestation of religious control. JR, some people have said that he is already embodied here. VV, I know, but that is basically a cosmic propaganda ploy. JR, that's what I'm saying. I was reading the other day in the paper about the Pope, not the current Pope, but the one who died in the 1960 seconds. He wrote in his diary that they supposedly found that he had conversations with Christ and Magdalene. What you are seeing here is this whole Fatima thing moving forward. VV, all of which of course is according to the Jehovah/Yahweh alien control paradigms. Yes, and the current pope, before entering the priesthood, was a cyanide salesman for IG Farben industry. The days of the Roman Catholic paradigm of religious control are numbered. Jr. So, there is that agenda coming in. There are a lot of agendas that have been played out by a lot of alien entities at different times. What I have been finding is that they have been dividing up the planet in terms of what group rules what area. Some people have asked, from their point of view, why is the information revealed by Alex so negative? Why is this fear-based? Jr. Well, I come back to these people and say, we aren't fear-based. We are telling you the reality, the way it is, from the Andromedan perspective. The person who is making it fearful is the person who is in the space to make it fearful. It is a decision to be in that space. Someone said to me one day, it seems that the Andromedan probabilities are not coming true, and I say, that's not true. What you are trying to do, out of habit, is to look at probabilities as a prediction. It's not. For example, Hale-Bopp is still around, and just like the Andromedans indicated, they parked a craft in the orbit of Mercury. Astronomers suddenly discovered new moons around Mercury. It's sitting there, and these new moons were detailed in Science News. I think what the Andromedans are saying is that we as a race are so complacent that we take things for face value without looking deeper, beyond our noses. The majority of the people, unfortunately, believe the news media as the source for truth. This is one reason why the DSG books are so important, because they provide a context within which people can move out of old patterns of perception and behavior. Jr. One of the latest things that was brought up is that there are new abductions which are taking place by a new group, and they are very gray-looking, but they are entirely robotic. They are made to look like the Greys. The Nibiru sent them in, because they are now going around collecting genetics. We have not discovered why, but it is being looked into by the Andromedan intelligence people. This is the way the Nibiru group is trying to bypass the Andromedan blockade, sending in robots. But, I suspect the Andromedans will soon put a stop to that, too. You'll have to ask Alex about that one primary question, because it hasn't been answered yet. The question about the responsibility of a neurologically impaired population? Jr. Right. We are being led down different paths, and we make the choices to go down these paths. Is it genetically ingrained to do this? Probably not, from what I gather. I told Alex that. Well, we as a race have been manipulated for so long down throughout the ages. That itself is intervention. He agreed. At one time they let themselves be seen by the population, but since then they have been keeping up the manipulation by their people. The actual intent of a non-interference concept presumes a pristine civilization that has never been interfered with. Of course, this has not been the case for Earth, and it never was the case. Jr. What we have boiled it down to is that for them to come down here and intervene, they have to break their own rules. We have discussed this, and I say, damn the rules. The other side is not playing by any rules. If you look at the situation with the group from Nibiru, on the one hand they are playing by the rules, because they are not being allowed to come down here and they have gone to the council to plead their case, that they have sovereignty and ownership. On the other hand, they are going around the rules by sending in these robotoids, disguising them to look like Greys to carry out their own agenda. Two wrongs don't make a right. Jr. Absolutely. From the Andromedan point of view, it came down to the point. Well, the original thing was that they were going to come in here, and the reason they were going to physically intervene was because they had to physically come in and shut down the time portals and all that stuff. Well, they have already done it, but they have done it in a very low-impact way that did not require them to be physically present here to do it. So far, they have effectively shut it down. Our point was that if they already intervened in the other two timelines, logic would dictate that they would have to intervene on this one, right away. It took them 90 days to decide to come in with some kind of global event in 1998. I don't expect them to tell us what the event is going to be, because the other side would know about it. If it happens earlier in the year, it could correlate with Mr. Dame's pre-event. To me, the way he described this pre-event, it sounded like HAARP. I said, well, what is HAARP for? What are the planetary defenses against extraterrestrials? Well, the people who run HAARP are presumably draconian souls. Jr. Right. Well, what will be an interesting thing to watch, if indeed the information coming from Joyce Riley is accurate regarding troops refusing to take the inoculation, It will be interesting to see at what levels the troops are refusing it. The upper levels of the military being associated with draconian souls. It would be interesting to see if a dividing line appears. The military would be thumbing its nose at its commander-in-chief, because Clinton has ordered that this is going to go down. It is interesting how this UN relocation thing is coming about, and how they are currently preparing for this. Jr. Yes. In order to prepare for this event within about 2 years, they have to either make sure that the American military troops necessary for defense of the country are shipped overseas, or make sure that all the American troops are medically incapacitated. Well, what is going on now in the Gulf and Bosnia is a good example of that, and how the agenda has been laid down for 10 years. I mean, companies and the United States shipped the biowarfare weapons to Iraq in the first place starting in 1988, and the same weapons are being used as an excuse to go over there in 1997 and 1998. The whole thing is becoming pretty transparent to a large segment of the population. The treasonous behavior of current and previous presidential administrations is also a factor here. Alex talked about the 160 million Native Americans that factions of the United States government killed in the 1,800 seconds. Neglected was the fact that George Bush's father, Prescott Bush, and the Standard Oil Rockefeller complex financially and materially built up and literally created Nazi Germany, resulting in World War II, which the FDR knew was coming, and the death of 50 million people. It's always the same families and the same groups of power-hungry people which result in the death of hundreds of millions of people over time. Knowing that these people are controlled by draconian factions, and worse, makes it even more hideous. December 31, 1997 Update Jr. Last night, Alex had a meeting with Mulroney, who said there is an extremely high probability that between the dates of May 27 and June 6, 1998, an area in Mammoth Lakes, California is going to blow sky high. It's a meadow area on the mountain, and the magma is right under the surface. He went on to say that when this happens, the entire United States will be blanketed in blackness for up to 2 weeks, and that it is recommended that people store water, because the water sources will be contaminated due to the ash. Alex asked him whether this would trigger any other events, and Mulroney answered that the probability was that this could also trigger 2 other volcanoes, one up in the Washington area, between Washington and Alaska, and one down towards Mexico. He said that there is a high probability that the San Andreas Fault will start to become extremely active. Have you ever heard of the Alpha Force before? Yes. Jr. Well, on the Eagle Net they have been talking about this biochip deal and the implantation of the military. Well, we asked Mulroney about the biochip, and he said that for quite a few years now the Delta Force, Alpha Force, SEALs and all the elite groups, as well as all of the major politicians, upon taking their oath, are implanted with the chips. Are they control chips as well as for monitoring? Jr. Yes. He didn't say, but Alex and I were talking about this. He did say that all the bugs have been worked out of chip technology, and that this was the next logical step. Alex asked Mulroney what the Alpha Force was all about, and Mulroney replied that the Alpha Force involved space defense teams. And,